Welcome to the AFC East Roundtable. This is the Jets Roundtable. I am joined alongside our co-pilots. I've got Mr. Jake to my this way. Got Mr. Matt O'Leary to my that way. Jake, how you doing today?
What's up, Ryan? Matt, I'm excited to be back on the Roundtable after a week off last week. So thank you guys for holding it down. And once again, Richie not on his own Roundtable.
I was gonna say we got like 3 weeks of no Richie here. What the heck is this? Nah, Richie's hanging out with TD and Dan down in Florida, having some good old time down there. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Excited to get into our Jets topics of the day. We always have a lot to get into. And of course, naturally, in the Super Bowl, there was a Jets narrative that could be talked about because the Jets are always a story. It's never easy.
All right, you heard it first. Let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. That's a good jumping off point here. Chiefs wind up beating the 49ers 25-22 in overtime. Jake, what were your thoughts of the Super Bowl overall?
You know, I'm not that surprised, to be honest. I liked the Chiefs all week, and just being out in Vegas and talking to all these people and being like, "Who do you like in the game?" There was like 2 people out of like the 30 people I spoke to that picked the Niners. So I think the public was all on the Chiefs. I never understood why the Niners were actually a slight favorite. I thought, give me Patrick Mahomes as an underdog. I'm going to bet him every time. And it's crazy that 3 straight games during these playoffs, he was an underdog, and he did what he does. And obviously the Chiefs defense is outstanding as well. But when it really came down to it, when they needed plays, like the best quarterback in the world got it done. I think that was ultimately the difference in the game. The Niners made a couple mistakes here or there, there's no doubt, but you can't expect them to be perfect. And it almost feels like if you're not perfect against Kansas City, they're just going to find a way to beat you. And it was a good game, really exciting, but I'm not surprised the Chiefs won. I liked them the whole week.
Matt, what about you? What were your thoughts on the Super Bowl overall?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised with the outcome, especially, early on, the 49ers go up by 10 and like this is not over. Like they're letting the Chiefs hang around a little bit. This is absolutely going to come back to bite them in the second half. And it did. The Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce. Kelce had like 1 catch for 1 yard in the first half and then had 8 for 90 in the second. It's like the inevitable is eventually going to get you. But it was a great second half, a really fun overtime, and, I would say pretty successful Super Bowl between 2 really good teams. 49ers have a great roster, but just couldn't get it done against Patrick Mahomes. It shows just how much quarterback really matters in this thing.
Not even just quarterback, too. I feel like the offensive play calling for the 49ers was super suspect in the second half. Like going away from the running game, that's 3 straight Super Bowls that Shanahan's been in that he's done that with. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no.
Hacking up a lung over here. But, it felt weird. It felt like they kept hanging around. When I saw, like, Chiefs -2, or, Chiefs +2 for this game, I took the Chiefs all day. And, like, I was pulling for the 49ers. I want to see Shanahan win a ring. I didn't really want to see Kansas City get another one. But, look, and overtime rules. First time we really got to see the overtime thing in the playoffs. Very interesting. And it was shocking to see how many 49ers players just had no idea of the rules and the rule change. Not to mention, like, the coin flip. There was actually the official that did the coin flip when Fred Warner said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take we're going to receive the ball." He's like, "Are you sure?" Because obviously I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like, well, wouldn't you want to defer this? You're guaranteed an opportunity with the football. Wouldn't you want to see what the Chiefs do first? And then, if they score a touchdown, then you could score a touchdown and you could just go for the 2 and win the game at that point. We found out later on that the Chiefs were actually going to do exactly that had the 49ers score the touchdown. So, Jake, any thoughts to the new overtime rules and how that played into the final bit of the game there?
Yeah, I thought it was a mistake in real time. Now, when Romo made the point of the broadcast, maybe the Niners defense was just gassed and they were tired. I was like, all right, well, maybe that makes some sense. But then, after the game, Shanahan said the reasoning behind taking the ball was so on the 3rd possession, a score would win the game. And that obviously is not the reasoning. I thought would maybe be like, all right, that makes sense. Your defense is gassed. You wanted to give them some time. So I thought it was a mistake because you allow Patrick Mahomes to basically have 4 downs to get a first down. Like, you put him in a spot where he knows what the scenario is. Like, field goal ties and extends the game, touchdown wins the game, and you have 4 downs to do it. And it's Patrick Mahomes. Like, I never want to give him extra downs. In fact, if you gave Patrick Mahomes only 2 downs versus 3 downs, he's still probably better than most quarterbacks in the league, and that's how he had to kind of operate, right? So I was surprised, and I think in hindsight, that's certainly a fair criticism of Shanahan. Going away from the run, as you mentioned, Ryan, that's certainly something you could bring up. And then just the way the overtime was handled, I thought they should have taken the ball. There's no doubt.
Matt, what about you? What do you think about the final minutes of that game, the overtime section?
Yeah, it was definitely strange. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. I was not fully aware of the overtime rules, like that it was that much of a change. I didn't think they did a fantastic job explaining it beforehand. But now after, like, so initial reaction was like, yeah, okay, if they get down the field and score a touchdown, then it's game over. And then like, wait a minute, no, the Chiefs would have a chance to go down and tie it, or potentially go for 2 and go for the win. So I agree. I think I would have, given them the ball first. And then that way, right? Like if whoever for the 49ers, let's say they defer and the Chiefs go down, they kick a field goal, field goal ties it or touchdown wins the game. So I kind of would have liked operating under those rules. And it just felt like the 49ers themselves, like if you watch some of the mic'd up clips, the players weren't even really aware of the rules. So I think that's a bad job from their coaching staff.
Now, the game did end with a former New York Jet, catching the game-winning touchdown. Mecole Hardman predicted the Jets would beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. He winds up beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Matt, what were your thoughts on, of course, it's Mecole Hardman catching the game-winning touchdown?
Yeah, that was my reaction to it. I was just like, how could you not just laugh about it? I think some people took that like way too seriously online, where I think I tweeted something to the effect of just, of course. And it's like, what, you're saying they should have kept Mecole Hardman? He only had 100. I'm like, I know. Like he's I'm not saying he's good or the Jets made a mistake. I'm just saying naturally he's the one who comes down with the ball, right? So again, kind of just my reaction was a laugh. The narrative that the Chiefs and Kelsey and Hardman were trying to push that the Jets gave up on him, and here he is making a big play in the Super Bowl. Did Kansas City not give up on him when they let him walk for $4 million? So that was funny too. Just a lot of hypocrisy in all of it, but hard not to just chuckle and say, of course it was Mecole Hardman.
Jake, what about you? What were your thoughts on the Hardman touchdown?
I think Matt nailed it. Like Mecole Hardman, like he really did nothing for them during the playoffs. In fact, he came very close to costing them the game against the Bills when he fumbled out of the end zone, and like that would have been like, so like the revisionist history is kind of funny. Like, of course, all the Jet beat writers, they couldn't wait to beat the dead horse of Hardman, but like he was only playing because Kadarius Toney was inactive anyway. So, I mean, of course, he does end up scoring the game-winning touchdown, but like, I don't think this is some like major indictment on the Jets for getting rid of him. Like, Kansas City got rid of him; they didn't want him, as Matt said. So, I mean, it is what it is. Like, of course, he ends up being the guy to score the touchdown, but I didn't lose sleep over it. It's not like the Jets made this like criminal mistake letting him go. The mistake was signing him if they didn't have a clear role for what they were going to do with him. And honestly, a big reason why Hardman was expendable is because they found Xavier Gibson, who was cheaper and more effective. So at the end of the day, to me, this is a major non-story that only is a story because we're talking about the Jets and how passionate this fan base is.
Yeah, I mean, you hear everyone go to social media immediately after that touchdown, and it's, oh, the Jets, whoa this, whoa us. We couldn't find a number 2 wide receiver, and this guy winds up catching a game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Like you guys touched on, he almost gave away the game the week before, and fumbling out the back of the end zone. It just, I don't think there's anything to this. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. As Jake said, I think it's a total non-story. But from then, and like eerily fishy maybe, right after that Super Bowl, we get the legacy uniforms confirmed. Jake, what were your thoughts on the timing of the legacy jerseys?
Look, I got to be honest. I didn't love the timing of it. I thought if they just waited till like Monday, it would have been fine. It would have been exciting. They could have just sent out the generic 2024 starts now tweet that like every team sends out right after the Super Bowl. The Giants, for example, did the same thing. I just think it was like a previously scheduled thing. Oh, we're going to announce the uniforms right after the Super Bowl. But I think when Mecole Hardman scores the game-winning touchdown in a classic that goes to overtime, I feel like we maybe want to reevaluate the strategy of announcing it that night because it kind of does feel like tone deaf. Like, here are the Chiefs celebrating a Super Bowl with one of your former players being a big reason why they won. and your organization's focused on new jerseys. So like it doesn't look great. I'd be the first to acknowledge that. That being said, it's already Thursday. I've kind of moved on, and I'm excited about the legacy uniforms because they're awesome and they should be permanent. And I've been hearing rumblings as of you, Ryan, that this was coming for a while. So it's good to be right about that, and I'm glad because there's just no denying how much better the Jets look in the legacy uniforms, and I can't wait to see the green version to complement the white one you see on the screen there. So I'm pumped up.
Matt, what were your thoughts on the on the timing of the legacy jersey and the time? I guess the timing and thoughts of going to the legacy jersey.
Yeah, it's the right move to make a switch. I don't know if there's very few 5-year runs in a uniform that are worse than the Jets run from 2019 to 2023, with hiring Adam Gase into Sam Darnold mono, into the Seeing Ghost game, into Adam Gase 2-14, and Frank Gore going up the A gap a billion times, into rookie Zach Wilson, into losing the last 6 games of the season to miss out on the playoffs, into Aaron Rodgers getting hurt and doing the Zach Wilson debates for the 3rd year in a row. So moral of the story, I'm very happy that they are changing up these uniforms. I absolutely could not stand that like 15 seconds after Mecole Hardman walks into the end zone, Woody Johnson's firing off the tweet. And like Jake said, it was predetermined. Obviously, I get that, but they couldn't waited like 2 days after. It's just the optics of it was so strange, but I'm pumped up to see the green.
It was like we joked online, like, oh, just like there's literally memes that we saw, like keeping the entire coaching staff, like not making any changes here or there. And then like it's like the meme, it's like put new jerseys and like slap it on like duct tape over like an exploding water tank. Like there's memes for this, and the Jets actually did exactly what the fans were jokingly saying they were going to do. That's what makes it so absurd.
Yeah, it was so obvious though, right?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
I can't wait for it. I'm excited to see the green one because I'm hoping they do the white collar on the green jersey and you don't see like a green on green. I think it would be a nice little contrast to pop. Jake, what would be your first player's jersey that you want to get with the legacy, and what color would you want? Assuming similar designs for black and green.
Yeah, so I already have a Rodgers legacy, the one that's on the screen there. I have a Sauce and a Garrett legacy, and I think Quincy as well. So the next ones I'm going to get are all going to be the green version of it because I have enough of the white ones. Probably I'll get Garrett because he's changing numbers to 5, so I want that. And then maybe Jermaine Johnson in the legacy.
That was mine. That's the one I want to get.
Yeah, because I'm all about like repeating the jerseys, especially because you guys know I use a little site called Parts Unknown to get my jerseys for $30, so it doesn't like do a tremendous amount of damage to get a bunch of them. But I definitely think the next couple of jerseys I'm going to get are going to be the green version of the legacy, whatever it ends up looking like.
Yeah, I do like the idea of having some green jerseys in my arsenal as well. And Jermaine Johnson is exactly where I was going with this one. I hated the font on our last jerseys, the stick of butter or like the Tetris piece, whatever you want to call it, that goes up and down. The font for the ones look a lot better on the legacy jersey. So for me, maybe I'll wind up getting a green Sauce as well as number 11. Jermaine Johnson. I was real high on him pre-draft, so that was someone that I, kind of hung my hat on from like an evaluation standpoint. Matt, what jersey and colorway would you want?
Yeah, so I too have an Aaron Rodgers legacy jersey in the white. So I definitely want to go with green to change it up. The black, I'm very curious to see what those look like. And maybe, more than likely, I'm probably going to get one of those also. But first purchase is definitely going to be the Garrett Wilson switch to number 5 in the green. I have an OG Garrett 17 jersey that I pulled the trigger on after he caught the overtime touchdown pass week 2 his rookie season. I'm like, that's it. That's my guy. Bang, jersey, click. And then they never wore green jerseys pretty much ever after that. Not that they wore them that game either, but I'm going to like that they wear green and white, not just like we're going to rock white every single week. So I'm excited for that. And Jermaine Johnson's a good one. Maybe Sauce. I don't have a Sauce Gardner one yet, so maybe I'll go with Sauce Gardner for the other.
Going from our tone-deaf owner's announcement of legacy jerseys to our tone-deaf owner on every other comment that he makes at the NFL Honors ceremony. Jake, what were your thoughts on the comments made by Woody Johnson, both about the offensive line, about not having a backup quarterback, not switching to grass, or the struggles of possibly switching to grass? What were your thoughts on all of his comments?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Woody said anything that like I could sit here and say he's wrong for saying. I don't know what purpose it served to basically, say the line about Zach Wilson. We didn't have a backup. Like that's kind of on you, man. You're the owner. We all were screaming for changes to be made, and you allowed your GM to not basically do anything. But I actually didn't mind the we need to produce. He basically said playoff mandate without saying it. I'm fine with that because it should be out there in the open. There's an argument to be made. They could have made changes this past year. I get why Woody ultimately didn't. I think Woody's anger, though, I think a lot of it does stem from the athletic story that came out. Because remember, this is the same guy that with 3 games to go following that debacle against the Dolphins where they were shut out, he gave a vote of confidence to everyone, saying everyone's coming back. Hackett, Saleh, Douglas. He basically gave them a mulligan with 3 games to go, and then they won 2 of their last 3 games. So, you'd think, well, why would his tone be so radically different? Well, I think it's because that athletic article came out and he probably wasn't happy of, what was written. So maybe that is part of it. But at the end of the day, I don't think Woody said anything we didn't already know, other than um, just publicly making it known that this regime's got to win next year. Otherwise, there's going to be changes.
Matt, what were your thoughts about Woody's comments about at the NFL honors?
Yeah, I mean, any time he has an opportunity to shoot his mouth off, he's just got to do it, I guess. I wish he would just be in a spot where, he provides the money, which he does to his credit. He is an owner that is willing to spend, but I think he is someone who loves to get involved and be like the face of the team in a way. And I'd rather an owner who's a little bit more behind the scenes and hires football people to make the football decisions. Like, I don't think he should be saying like, we didn't have a backup quarterback on the roster, or, saying, seemingly taking shots at the off. Like everyone in the world knew the offense stinks. We don't need the owner to go out there at the NFL honors ceremony and to, shit talk the offense after that. So I thought it was in bad taste. I don't think it helps Zach Wilson's trade value, which is, the next move that's going to be coming here. I think that's probably something that happens around maybe the combine a little bit before free agency. So I could do without the Woody comments.
Yeah, for me, the stadium ones were kind of frustrating because we heard the World Cup's coming to MetLife, the championship in 2026. So they're going to have to switch out for grass anyway for that, that event. And the billionaires, Mara and Woody, just can't figure out. They don't have enough money to plant grass twice a year. It's absolutely ridiculous. Denver swapped out their grass twice this past over the course of the last calendar year. There's no reason the Jets, with another billion-dollar owner and the Maras, can't figure it out. And then some of the comments, Green Bean brought this up. They're talking about like rocks and stuff. Like, you're not gonna have rocks in your dirt, Woody. If you are, hire all the Jet fans. We'll get out there with our little gold sifting pans, and we'll be able to get all the rocks out for you. All the players will love going to grass. There's no excuse not to go to grass when you have as many resources as the Jets and Giants have. As far as the Zach Wilson comments, that like, for me, that put to bed the whole JetBlue rumor of like, it's the sponsor of the Jets. That's why the Jets took Zach Wilson. No, you don't say that comment and piss off your number 2 sponsor if that was like actually a true conspiracy theory. So I'm glad that kind of got put to bed. But yeah, like you guys said, there's not really anything shocking coming from these comments. One of the interesting ones was the comment about AVT and needing 2 guards. It sort of implies that at least he's thinking AVT's moving to tackle, which I don't know how that necessarily helps us from a strategic standpoint. Maybe you argue that the Jets might not be looking tackle in the draft or something like that, assuming they sign one in free agency. But I very much don't want our owner talking about player moves or like what we actually need. I want like our GM to handle that. I just feel like he's take a little bit more of a backseat, Woody. That's all I want to see. Any more comments on Woody Johnson's comments, Jake or Matt?
Well, the thing you said about Saleh's going to concentrate more on the offense, like what exactly does that mean? I mean, like the offense is going to look better because Aaron Rodgers is back, but it's like yet another shot kind of at like Hackett, like them not having faith in Nathaniel Hackett, which they shouldn't based on what we watched this past year. I do wonder, like, can Saleh sit in meeting rooms with Aaron Rodgers and be like, hey, we're playing the Bills this week. If I was Sean McDermott, this would be my game plan to go up against you guys. This is what I would look to do with our personnel. Like, has Saleh been doing that the last 3 years, or was he just deferring to LaFleur and then Hackett? Maybe Saleh being more involved in that could be beneficial. There's a great video I saw online of like Belichick meeting with Tom Brady during like the '09 season before they're getting ready to play the Ravens. And like Belichick is going through like the Ravens defense could have looked to do against Brady. And like, here's how they're going to use Ed Reed. And like, I thought that was super interesting. Like maybe that's how Salah could be more involved if he's not already doing that. I don't know because we're not there. So that was like maybe the other thing that I thought was somewhat newsworthy. But at the end of the day, you know, the offense is going to be better because Aaron Rodgers is playing quarterback for them and he's not Zach Wilson. Like that's the bottom line with the Jets offense. If Rodgers is healthy, there's just no way they're going to be historically bad offensively.
Matt, any thoughts on the offense comment?
Yeah, I mean, it's again something that we knew, right? Like they're gonna they're gonna look to bring in a backup quarterback. They're gonna look to add a ton on the offensive line and a couple more receivers. Not really anything new, and they're banking on Aaron Rodgers coming back and elevating some of the other guys, like elevating Nathaniel Hackett and Alan Lazard, and some of the lesser pieces, and a potentially poor offensive line. So I'm with Jake in saying that it's this team is going to go as far as Aaron Rodgers can take them. And again, that's not really anything too surprising based on, ever since they made the move to acquire him, they were putting all their chips in the Aaron Rodgers basket, which I'm okay with because quarterback matters a ton in this league. And the Jets have really not had very many good quarterbacks in our lifetime. So I'm all about it. And it's a plan that I hope works in 2024.
Going from offense to a potential trade target that's popped up, Brandon Aiyuk seemingly playing his last game as a San Francisco 49er, or at least maybe alluding to that. His girlfriend said something along the lines of last time he stepped foot on the field. His brother said, "This is why we're out of here." And then obviously him crying at the locker kind of all leads people to think that this is going to be the case. He's due about $14 million on his 5th-year option, and it's time to get that big contract. So it's either going to wind up being a trade, or, I don't think he's going to go into the final season playing out a 1-year deal. I guess we could see that potentially happen. But what happens here? The 49ers have had wide receivers in the past look for new contracts. Deebo Samuel threatened to hold out, wanted a trade, and then wound up rescinding that when they gave him the big contract he wanted. So, Jake, do you think the 49ers are going to pay Brandon Aiyuk? And secondly, would you make a trade for him if you were the New York Jets?
I think he's going to end up signing a deal and staying because this kind of reminds me of the Deebo scenario from a couple of years ago. It just feels like the good teams, they want to keep their best players. They figure out a way to make it happen. That being said, I think the Jets should inquire, but I don't know if they have enough to get him because you don't have a second-round pick this year. I wouldn't trade the 10th pick in the draft for him. And are you going to trade next year's one? Well, I would be open to it, but what if the Niners are like, well, we kind of need a pick this year that could help us replace him so we could draft another receiver or whatever. So I don't know. Like I don't think a 3rd-round pick is enough this year. So I don't know if the Jets have enough ammunition to potentially make that type of deal. I would inquire, find out what it would cost, but I think it's unique because I think the Jets want to make sure they protect their 2025 first-rounder at all costs because you might need that pick if crap hits the fan this year. You're starting over and you need a quarterback. So I'd be wary of trading next year's one. I think I'd be willing to maybe like offer it if like Aiyuk was serious about coming here because ideally next year's one is pick 32, but it doesn't feel like this is a move the Jets can make given the fact you wouldn't trade your 10th pick and you don't have a 2nd-round pick this year to use in a deal. So I'd be surprised if he's even traded at all, but if he is traded, I'd be surprised if it's to the Jets.
So real quick, the San Francisco 49ers have, so they obviously have their 1st and 2nd-round picks, but they have 2 picks in the 3rd, 2 picks in the 4th, 2 picks in the 5th, 2 picks in the 6th, and 2 picks in the 7th. So they might be open to a 2025 pick, going into next year. Maybe it's conditional. That can get as high as a 1. I'm with you. I don't want to trade the number 10 pick. I think it's too valuable for our offensive line needs. And to do some type of pick swap would really drop you too far down to really get a meaningful tackle, I think. Matt, what are your thoughts on Brandon Aiyuk?
I love the player. I just don't think that they're giving up a 1st-round pick this year. Now, as you guys said, in 2025, would I give up a 1st? I would, because you're hoping that's going to be, pick 32. And, hopefully you fill out some pieces on the offensive side of the ball in this year's draft class. But if it came down to it and your choices are keep pick 10 and draft offensive line or trade pick 10 for Brandon Aiyuk, I'm keeping the pick and drafting offensive line because I don't think they're going to be able to do enough in just free agency to fix it. And it stinks because if they were in a spot where they hit on, offensive line in the 2020 draft and they don't move back, or they don't, take Will McDonald and go offensive line instead, and they have their 2 tackles, maybe this is a different circumstance. If the offensive line was in a better spot and you could justify trading that pick for a playmaker, but I just don't see it right now. I don't think they could afford to do that.
Boys and girls, if you have any questions for us, drop them in the live chat. If you want to drop a Q before it, that'll just kind of let me know that is something you guys want to hear and talk about. Let's hop off of the Brandon Ayuk comment. I see Mark coming in and says, hey guys, when do you think we see some movement on our own free agents? Matt, Jets have a few big free agents. I mean, obviously the biggest one being Bryce Huff, and then, to some degree, Mekhi Becton, and, maybe some lower end guys. What are your thoughts on our own free agents? When would you like to start seeing some moves made? The franchise tag deadline starts, I believe, Tuesday of this upcoming week. So that's when you'll first be able to apply a franchise or transition tag.
Okay, I don't think the Jets use the franchise or transition tag this year. I know some people want to see them do it with Bryce Huff so that they could tag and trade him. I am in the camp of keeping Bryce Huff, and there was a story today that Samini put out that the guy from Jason from Over the Cap, his prediction is that the Jets are going to be able to sign Bryce Huff at the 11th hour and keep him for $17 to $18 million a year. And I would be comfortable with that. I think there's a world where you can keep Bryce Huff at that price and still improve your offense. And I don't want to hear about Will McDonald. It was a first-round pick. This is your guy who's your best edge rusher, your best pass rusher, and you're hoping to be playing with a lead in 2024 with Aaron Rodgers. I think it makes sense to have an elite pass rush so that you can close out games in the fourth quarter. That's the plan for this team. He gives them the best chance to do that. So I don't think they'll be able to sign him before free agency hits. I think that's something that, if it were to happen, would be kind of at the 11th hour, and I wouldn't put the chances on it happening very high. I do feel, unfortunately, that I think he is going to hit the market and go elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest one to me. Becton, I don't see coming back. And then I think they retain like the special teams guys. Ashton Davis maybe is another one who they could bring back. And from there, I think a lot of guys are going to end up leaving.
Jake, what about you? What do you think about our own free agents, particularly Bryce Huff?
I think Huff is a very unique circumstance, right? Because there's never been a player that plays the amount of snaps he's played that is seemingly looking for the amount of money he's reportedly looking for. So I think what has to happen is we get to the combine in about 10 days, and Huff's agents can kind of start talking with teams kind of under the table, how it always goes, and they can find out what his potential value would be if he were to hit the open market. And then the Jets can kind of reassess. All right, he wants 20. Well, turns out that's not out there. Hey, Jets, would you be willing to do 16 or 17 million per year? Can we meet in the middle? Because I guess Rich Samini floated out the idea like the Jets would be looking to pay like between 13 and 15 million a year, and Huff wants 20. So is there that common ground in the middle? That's where Jason from Over the Cap was predicting that 11th hour, like 17 to 18 million dollar per year contract. Which, by the way, I would do. This is a team that paid Carl Lawson $15 million per year the last 3 years, and Huff's better and has been more durable and more effective. So I would be willing to make that kind of investment. That being said, I feel like it's way more likely they get deals done with like Greg Zuerlein and Thomas Morstead and like Justin Hardy, for example, before Huff. Huff might actually legitimately hit the open market, whereas I think those guys I mentioned have way more of a likelihood of getting a deal done before quote-unquote legal tampering begins. I think it's March 11th, but I could be wrong on that. But point being, I think the other guys they'll be able to get done, and I think Huff's the big wild card where it might actually happen where he hits the open market and you figure it out from there.
Yeah, I feel like the special teams guys are a must. Between Hardy, Zuerlein, and Morstead, they were so good on special teams. Just copy and paste it from last year. Same thing with the defense. Keep your guys around. Matt mentioned Ashton Davis. I would love to bring him back, compete for a starting role at safety, or even just be the third safety. I think is a really nice option. He's always seeming to be around the ball. Bryce Huff, for me, I want him back in the worst way. And as much as I want to stay optimistic and say, it could happen in the 11th hour, I don't see it happening. After everything the Jets have done the last year and a half for Bryce Huff, It's, hey, we could hit him with the first round tender, but we're going to hit him with the second round tender because we don't really want him. We want someone to take him away for that second round price. Oh, and then we're going to draft his replacement, and we're, play him late into the fourth quarter of a preseason game, and now he's not getting enough snaps during the season. One of his biggest things is he wants to get more snaps. He wants the most amount of money. I don't think the Jets are going to be the one that's going to offer him the most amount of money. And if I were him, I'd probably be a little jaded with how the Jets treated me the last year. And I'd, either say franchise tag me or I'm going to test the open market. And I would be very surprised if the Jets did apply the franchise tag based on how much salary cap space we have and the negotiating power that winds up maybe being lost at that point for that level of contract for a player like Huff, who's not really a first down type player. You're not going to play the run too much. But there's going to be a team out there that's going to want to play him 75, 80% of the snaps, and he'll be more valuable to that team than he will be for the New York Jets. Because as long as we're rotating guys consistently on the ends, there's no way he's going to get enough playing time to justify the contract that we'd be giving him, given that we've just brought in traded up in the first round for Jermaine Johnson, and then took Will McDonald just this past year. So sadly, I think the Jets are not going to get anything for him. And even the comp pick that you might theoretically get in 2025, the Jets are going to go out and sign free agents this season because they are in a hot seat year with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. So it sucks. You're probably not, or at least you're not getting a third round comp pick. You might get maybe a sixth round comp pick or something like that on the back end. But man, Joe Douglas totally botched this whole thing. If you were sitting at the trade deadline and you were not planning to re-sign Bryce Huff, he should have been moved at that point in time during the season. We just lost a ton of value by doing it. Greenbean, I know, still thinks that there's a shot that we tag and trade him. I'm hoping that's the case. If there were a trade, Matt, what do you think Huff could go for?
Probably like a second or third round pick, I would say. I don't think he gets a first. I think Greenbean has brought up the Montez Sweat comparison, where he was able to go for a second round pick and showed some similarities there. I would like to be optimistic and think that they could get a second round pick for him if that were the case. But the tag and trades are sometimes complicated to work out because the players got to want to go to that spot and get a long-term deal done with that team. So I think that's going to, potentially be a challenge there. And if you're going to lose him, obviously, I would rather, tag and trade him than just have him leave for nothing. I just don't know how likely that is to happen.
Jake, what about you? What do you think Huff could fetch in a trade?
I would be surprised, just like Matt, if they could get it done. I hope Greenbean's right. Like, if you tell me they could get a second for Huff, that obviously, certainly eases the sting because you could then use that second this year and get a good player that could help you on offense potentially. But I think it's really complicated because, as Matt said, the player has to sign the tag first, and as the player signs the tag, you then got to carry that cap hit on your sheet until eventually you move that player. And does that impact your ability to sign guys in free agency? I think one option with Huff could be maybe the transitional tag, because then at least you have the right of first refusal. You let another team negotiate the deal with Huff, and then you can match it. If not, then you can get a draft pick out of it. So, but I also don't know if the Jets want to take the risk of no one signing Huff because of that tag, like what we saw with Lamar Jackson last year. No team wanted to sign him and give up 2 first-round picks. I don't know
the
if
transition tag, you don't get a pick.
Wait, so what was the tag that Lamar had? What was that called?
He had the transition, but the fear with the transition tag was that you could that the Ravens were going to match it either way. So it didn't make sense for another team to work out the contract with Huff. If if he gets the transition tag, the Jets would have to match it and then trade him after that. Otherwise, you'd have to do the franchise tag, and then you would get the 2 first-round picks. So if the Jets decided to opt out, so that's one reason I actually do like the transition tag, is it at least provides the optics of the Jets wanting to sign Bryce Huff to the interior, to the inside of our locker room. You're not just allowing him to walk. It's like, hey, we want you to test the free market and then come back to us because we would like the option to match it if we can. And maybe there's some sort of symbolic gesture there. It just, like you mentioned, Jake, it's going to eat up $20 million of your salary cap immediately as soon as he signs that tag. And does that impact your ability to sign other free agents?
Yeah, it's a very complicated scenario because, once again, we're talking about a guy that played 42% of the snaps last year, and he's really good. But how much of the fact that the Jets have a really good D-line coach, have a history of developing talent on that side of the ball, we can question the coaching staff all we want. There's no denying what they have done on defense with UDFAs like Bryce Huff and Tony Adams and Quincy being a waiver wire claim, JFM waiver wire claim, and these guys have turned into, in some cases, Pro Bowl and All-Pro level players. Plus, like Jermaine Johnson from year 1 to year 2 went from a rotational guy to a Pro Bowler. How do we know the Jets internally don't say, well, Will McDonald is going to do the same thing next year? So I think the Jets would like to keep Huff, but I think they're going to draw the line in the sand. I don't know what number that is, but maybe that's why that transitional tag, Ryan, would make sense, because at least you would know what the line in the sand is if you want to keep the guy or extend him.
Matt, any other thoughts on Bryce Huff and where things may go?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he ends up hitting the open market, and a team with a ton of cap space pays him the, close to $20 million that he's looking for. I think that's probably the end result here. I'm going to be pissed when it happens. Like, I know that there's some Jet fans are already like trying to positive spin it like in advance in their head. Like, oh, Will McDonald's going to take the jump. And, he's a product, he being Bryce Huff's a product of this system. And, he gets so many sacks because Quinnen's double teamed. And like, I don't know. I see Jet fans like gas up some of the worst players on the roster and then try to talk themselves out of one of the better players on the team, like actually being good. It's so strange to me, but I'm kind of just preparing for that to happen.
JT comes in and says, I'd lose it if we don't go offensive tackle in the draft. So I guess I'll throw it to you first, Matt. What are your thoughts on number 10 overall? Is it like guaranteed tackle, or are there other positions you would consider?
So it's definitely not guaranteed because it's really contingent on what happens next month in March. Who knows? Maybe they go out in free agency and they sign 2 tackles, or they say, we sign a tackle and a guard, and AVT is going to play tackle. He'll play right tackle. So then that changes thing. And then maybe you do go wide receiver or Brock Bowers at pick 10. I don't think it's likely that the Jets do that, though. I do think if like you had a pie chart of the probability of what position's it's gonna be for the Jets in the first round, I think it's going to be a huge block of offensive line, smaller block of wide receiver, smaller block of tight end, and then like a sliver of the field. But I think more than likely it's going to be offensive line.
Jake, what about you? What other positions, or could you see the Jets going other positions other than offensive tackle at number 10?
Receiver, I think, is in play depending on what they had done in free agency to that point. I right now it's so tough to picture anything but a tackle, but things obviously change based on what happens in free agency. I know Brock Bowers is a possibility as well. I just don't love the idea of the Jets being the team to like get it right with a tight end that high. Like, to me, if this was last year and Bowers was there, maybe I would be like, all right, like if you're going to make a luxury pick, like I kind of understand it, but it kind of feels like McDonald was that luxury pick last year, and they have such a glaring need at tackle and receiver that even though Bowers is way more than just a quote unquote tight end, that to me doesn't feel like a pick this regime can afford to make. So I'm kind of with the commenter, JT. Like, I probably would lose it as well if they don't go tackle. Now, if Malik Neighbors is there, maybe that changes things, but I think it's going to be a tackle at the end of the day. We keep hearing how great of a tackle class it is, and that's such a glaring need for the Jets.
Yeah, I get the feeling that Odunze and Neighbors are the 2 wide receivers, assuming Marvin Harrison Jr. goes 4 overall. If either one of Odunze or Neighbors is there, I could see the Jets pulling the trigger on that. They're really, really good. I think they're a step above some of the other wide receivers in this class. If they decided to trade down a little bit, maybe you look at a Brian Thomas Jr., a little bit bigger sized wide receiver. Maybe you pick up a 2nd round pick in a trade down and you feel comfortable with, enough of the tackles or something along those lines. But I agree. I very much want to go tackle at the top of this draft. I don't think we have enough resources in free agency, and I don't think there's enough tackles available in free agency either way. Like, if we get 1 tackle in free agency, I feel like that's probably a win as far as it goes in our book. I would be very surprised to see anything else. I'm hoping Bowers goes before us. I wouldn't mind the selection if the Jets did make that move, but like Jake alluded to, it's a very risky proposition. You have a position that generally does not hit well in the first round. The best tight ends in the league are generally found rounds 3, 4, 5 for the most part. I'm hoping the Chargers with Greg Roman decide to go with Bowers at number 5. That would knock down either an offensive lineman. I think that's the scenario where I see maybe a receiver falling to the Jets or one of the top 2 tackles in Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt. But yeah, I very much want to go with one of the tackles. I guess, Matt, before we hop off this question, do you like, if Olu Fashanu is on the board for the Jets at 10. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer maybe Fuaga or Funga, who the Jets have actually been tied to from like a Joe Douglas loves him perspective? Is there a way you potentially lean right now?
Yeah, and I really like both those guys a lot. I would be comfortable with either of them, but if both are available at the same time, I'm taking Fashanu because I think he's a better pass protector, and I think he's a pure left tackle, where Fuaga's really just a right tackle, and not that's not a reason to pass up on him if Fashanu and Alt are off the board. The Jets, desperately could use an elite level player like that on their offensive line. But if I had the choice, my choice would be the better pass protector and the one who plays on the left side, because left tackle's a more important position. I know some are a little bit concerned with him in the run game. I don't think he's horrible in the run game. I think that's just the area that he needs work the most. But to me, he's by far the best pass protector of offensive tackles in this draft class. And it's the name of the game. They got to be able to keep the quarterback upright. They weren't able to do it last year. For years now, they've really struggled with it. So give me the better pass protector.
Jake, Olu, Fashanu, Fuaga on the board. Which one you going with?
Well, I was torn, but after Matt O'Leary just tweeted out some one-on-one film of Olu Fashanu pass blocking, that's my guy. I'm in. No, I like Fashanu. I had Connor Rogers on my show last week, and he's someone's draft expertise I really respect, and he thinks Olu's plug and play, best pure pass protector in the class, better than Alt. Alt might be the better overall lineman right now, but like it kind of feels like if the only weakness for Shano is he's not a great run blocker right away, that's something he has to get better at and develop into. That's fine, because Brees Hall proved he could run behind the worst O-line any of us have seen and still be incredibly productive. Whereas the Aaron Rodgers coming off injury at 40 years old, you're better served having the plug and play elite pass protector. So I think that's why I lean Olu over Fuaga, but I like Fuaga as well, and I wouldn't sit here and say how could they take him if that's their pick at 10 either.
Yeah, I'm in line with you guys. I've been on the Fashanu train for a bit now. I was super ticked off when the Jets beat the Washington Commanders, because I thought it meant for sure that Fashanu and Alt would both be gone. But as I continue to do these mock drafts, I keep winding up with Olu falling to the New York Jets, and I think maybe some of that Fuaga smoke might just be that. It might be a little bit of a smokescreen to try and get that left tackle to fall. I'm interested to see what the Jets do in free agency, because if we sign someone like a Jonah Williams who has left tackle, right tackle flexibility, then it kind of opens the door for you to go either tackle at number 10 and you just select your best player available. I would prefer to lean the pass blocking route with Olu more than the right tackle side of things, but I would not be upset with either one of these players. Johnny Football comes in and says, Harbaugh is telling people J.J. McCarthy is a top 10 pick. Good news for the New York Jets. If J.J. McCarthy goes in the top 10, this is great news for the New York Jets. It would be absolutely awesome. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but I do think it is possible. I think when you start looking at picks number 11, 12, 13, that's the Vikings, the Broncos, and the Raiders, all three teams could use a quarterback. I'm kind of leaning the direction of the Broncos going after J.J. McCarthy purely because I think there's a respect between Sean Payton and Harbaugh, and knowing that J.J. was underneath Harbaugh for those years in Michigan, I could see him leaning that route. I would love for them to trade up in some capacity and push some other people down the board. If we could work out some type of trade with them and we get some pick back, maybe we get Cortland Sutton in a trade down with just 2 picks, and then you still get your right tackle just in front of the Raiders, or maybe Olu falls to you there and you still get your left tackle. Either way, I would really like that. Matt, your thoughts on J.J. McCarthy possibly going top 10?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that too, and that a lot of NFL scouts and NFL teams are a little bit higher on J.J. McCarthy than like the national media and some of the draft fans are. And I don't see it for JJ as a top 10 pick, but I don't know. The NFL's weird, man. Like there's a lot of weird decisions sometimes in this league. And I think he's someone who very well could go a lot higher than anticipated. And I'm with you. I think it's great if he ends up going in the top 10, because that pushes someone else down the board. So I hope someone wants to trade up for him. Hell, if who knows, one of the teams that are right behind the Jets, maybe they want to jump each other and the Jets move down 2 spots and are still able to get a Fashanu or a Fuaga and pick up a 2nd round pick. That might be the way to do it too.
Jake, what about you? What do you think about J.J. McCarthy?
Would love for the hype around him to continue, because, I mean, whether he's drafted in front of the Jets or people are trying to maybe get to pick 10 to trade up in front of some of the other quarterback needing teams, it benefits the Jets one way or another. This is kind of what we needed. Like, thank you, Harbaugh, for hyping them up. And now, we need these guys to have great combines and great, pro days, like what we saw when the, Jets ended up taking Zach Wilson. People went nuts over his pro day. I think that all helps because I still think best case scenario for the Jets, you could argue, is you move back, even if it's a couple spots, even if you just get a third round pick. Because then if you have 2 third-round picks, you could maybe package that to get back into the second round and get a better player in an all-in year. So I think any scenario where these quarterbacks get hyped up and that number 10 pick is in prime trade down spot and you can get some extra picks and still get a good player, that's probably what I would prefer for the Jets to do right now. And as Matt said, like if the more quarterbacks they get picked in front of the Jets, the more likely it is that one of these stud tackles you're identifying actually makes it to you at 10. So I think this is good. I hope it continues with the hype.
Shane wants to correct us. Lamar had the non-exclusive franchise tag. So he didn't have the transition tag. He had the non-exclusive tag, which means they would have had to give up 2 first-round picks if they wanted to sign him to a deal. And then I guess the idea was the Ravens would have matched it. And if they did want to trade him after that, it would be far more than just the 2 first-round picks is what you'd have to trade for. Let's see. Kareem says, am I the only one thinking about signing a center and moving Tittman to left guard and benching Laken Tomlinson? So, Kareem, I'll say this. I don't think the Jets should have Laken Tomlinson on their roster. I'm cool with maybe having him into training camp and allowing someone to beat him out, but I don't think he's going to be on our team at $13 million. And I am with you. I do want center in either free agency or the draft in some capacity. I like the idea of bringing back Connor McGovern at $1.9 million like he signed for this past season and moving Tittman over to guard. Because as much as we like Tittman at center, he was really, really good at guard. And I would love to find a way to have AVT, McGovern, and Tittman be the center of our offensive line. Matt, what are your thoughts on going center and then having Tittman play one of the guard positions?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think Joe Tittman showed that he could play well at guard this year, and maybe they feel more comfortable with a veteran center. Joe Tittman really, my biggest thing with him is he could use work snapping the ball. I think some of his snaps were a little bit on the lower side, so getting that ironed out is something that if he's going to play center he would need to work on. But if you're just going to say, hey, with his size, maybe he's even better suited at guard than he is at center, you want to sign a veteran, I'm good with that. Now, I would hope it would be someone a little bit better than Connor McGovern. I don't think I would want to just sign Connor McGovern and run it back with him. Now, if they want to sign McGovern and have him as a backup, that's a different story. But I could definitely see them going that route, especially if they want AVT at tackle instead of guard. And I'm with you. I would cut Laken Tomlinson and save the $8 million. I think the Jets would be better off. Jake,
what about you? Center and guard for Tittman?
Well, I'd cut Laken too. I'm with you guys there. He's just not good. I could find did people realize he led the NFL in pressures at his position? He's not good. You could find a veteran minimum guard that could do that. You know what I mean? So I'm good on Laken. As far as Tittman, I'd rather just leave him at center, and then if I'm going to do the AVT at tackle scenario, sign 2 guards or sign 1 tackle, sign 1 guard, and then depending on what happens at pick 10, AVT is one of your guards. The free agent you signed, whether it's Robert Hunt or Kevin Doxson or whoever, Zeitler, that's your other guard. I want to leave Tittman at center. He was drafted to be a center. I thought he played pretty well last year when given the opportunity. He's going into year 2. He now knows this offense. I could see Aaron Rodgers kind of championing Tittman to be the center for this team next year. You could bring McGovern back for depth purposes. He played on the minimum last year. I'm fine with that. But I want Tittman to be the center, and I would be willing to maybe even sign 2 free agent guards because it's a better guard class than it is tackle class. And then you have pick 10 and AVT as your tackles. That's an option, but I'm pro leave Tittman at center and let him develop into what he was drafted to do.
You mentioned it there briefly, Jake. Do you think there's any concern with Rodgers, who wanted a veteran center this past year, to have McGovern as his center? Or do you think we saw enough from Tittman this past year that Rodgers could have confidence? I'm a little leery with O'Leary with his comments and on what he said with the snapping of the ball not being quite where you wanted it. I don't know if Rodgers necessarily wants to deal with that, but do you think Rodgers would go, maybe the younger center over the vet?
I think if Tittman builds on what he did by the end of last year, he has a full offseason to get ready. He knows the expectations of him. I think he can improve and be a really good center by next year. So I honestly think Rodgers just wants the best 5 guys out there, and I'd be surprised if the Jets would pay big money to a center when I'd rather spend that money on a guard or a tackle and just let Tippmann continue to develop at the position they thought highly enough to make him the first.
So I think we froze there for a hot minute. I think we're back on. I don't know. Let me take a look over on YouTube. Let me know if we're all right. It looks like we're going again. So yeah, I think it sounds like we're.
Where did I lose you guys? I thought it was me, and then I refreshed my browser, and then I'm like, I think it's everyone.
Oh no, it was totally my end. I like all my internet just went out for a second, and I'm shocked it actually stayed on the stream. But yeah. So look, Jake was saying you're saying Tippmann, keep him at center. That's where we drafted him. 41 overall, very high pick. Any other comments you wanted to throw onto that?
Yeah, I think that was the genesis of what I was saying. So as long as that was relayed, I have accomplished my my goal of the point I was trying to make.
Let's see. I had another comment in here. I see Hennessy Heisman says, we need JJ to have a Zach Wilson pro day throw. Yes, just set him up. I think every quarterback is going to try and duplicate that throw that Zach Wilson had because GMs lost their ever-loving mind. I mean, remember, 24 of 24 GMs polled had Zach Wilson as the number 2 overall quarterback on that class. So it's not just the Jets that were doing it. I don't know. Just the more quarterbacks that can move up, the better. I had another comment in here. What did I want to throw up? Here we go. Daniel comes in and says, how would you feel about signing Williams in free agency? Draft a tackle in the first and a guard in the third. So this could be taken one of two ways. Most likely, Jonah Williams is who he's referring to, the right tackle from Cincinnati. He's played left tackle and right tackle. He is one of my favorite free agents this class, not necessarily from a skill point, but from a health availability standpoint and from a positional flexibility standpoint. It kind of hides your intentions with your draft pick at number 10 overall, especially if you're saying you're going to use AVT at tackle, then maybe people think you're going, wide receiver or weapon at the top of the draft, and your tackle winds up being there because someone's not jumping in front of you. The other side could be, Mike Williams from the Chargers could be getting cut, and he might become available. So I would say maybe, depending on cost, if it was him. But I like the idea of going, Jonah Williams in free agency. I like the idea of going tackle in the first round. I don't think I would go guard in the third. I think I would tend to lean wide receiver, but if all the top wide receivers are gone or not, or the value's not necessarily provided there, then I would probably lean into guard at that point. But I think the free agent market is so good on guard, I would prefer wide receiver in the third right now. Jake, what are your thoughts on Jonah Williams and then taking a tackle in the first and a guard in the third to solve our offensive line problems?
Jonah Williams, I think, should be talked more about because he's played both left tackle and right tackle. He has been, outside of, I think, like his first year in the league, incredibly durable the last couple of years. He's played every game. And I think he's only 26 years old. So I could see the Jets being interested in him because if you're going to spend big on a tackle, it kind of feels like you got to get the guy that has no history of injuries. And that's been Jonah Williams the last couple of years. He's been really, really durable. So I think he's definitely in play for the Jets. You honestly can make the case you rather him than maybe Tyron Smith because as good as Smith still is, he's missing at least 5+ games every year. That's his history, whereas Williams has stayed on the field. So I wouldn't hate that. You sign Williams, and then you could get a guard in the third round. I also think you could take Williams, and by the way, still draft the tackle at 10, right? Williams could be the right tackle. Olu Fashanu is your left tackle. That allows you to play AVT at either left or right guard, and Tippmann's your center, and whoever you sign in free agency is your other guard. I mean, 1 through 5, that's a pretty good offensive line, at least on paper, till they all get hurt by week 3. But at least for the first 2 games, that's pretty good, and we have that as Jet fans, so I don't hate it.
O'Leary, what do you think about Jonah Williams then going tackle and guard first and third round?
I love the idea of going with tackle and guard with their first 2 picks. I'm personally not really a Jonah Williams fan. I think he just allows way too many pressures and sacks. I do appreciate that he's been healthy the last couple of years and that he does have the ability to play on either side. And his age, those are all plus sides to his case. But I think he's going to get paid, $15+ million in free agency, and I don't think he's that caliber of a tackle. I mean, he's the 17th most pressures allowed this year. He allowed 8 sacks, which is an improvement from Mekhi Becton, but I was hoping for a bigger improvement. than going from Mekhi Becton to Jonah Williams. I think he probably could use a change of scenery, going somewhere out of Cincinnati. So maybe the Jets talk themselves into that. But he's not one of my favorite tackles on the market. I'd probably go a different direction.
Red John comes in and says, is there any chance the Jets keep Becton and he has a bounce back year, second year after his injury? I don't really have any interest in retaining Becton. I think he's going to get more money on the open market. I have someone who's saying they're thinking he's going to get around $14 million, which the Jets would be absolutely bonkers to sign him for that type of money. Like, I would not sign him for
$14 million should be fired before Becton's allowed to sign that deal.
It is crazy. There's no way you can sign him for that kind of money. Like 1 year, $5 million would be a lot for me to bring him back. Most pressure, I think I don't know if it was the most pressures or most sacks for Becton. And then also like just a penalty machine. Like, is that actually going to get cleaned up another year removed from the leg injury? I don't think so. I mean, there's some smoke around the like, oh, well, Rodgers likes Becton and some of that stuff. So maybe if they think they can't solve tackle at all, or maybe they strike out on Jonah Williams and all the other tackle prospects are done and they do get Becton back for a lower end contract, like maybe it's a like $5 to $7 million deal. He's got the positional flexibility. Maybe you like left tackle, right tackle. And with Rodgers behind the line, maybe he plays better because the ball's coming out a lot faster. Matt, any thoughts on bringing Becton back?
No shot. I know that Aaron Rodgers likes him. I'm sure he'll like someone who protects him better, even more.
Jake, any thoughts on Mekhi Becton?
I mean, if he'd be willing to come back to like be the swing tackle or like not be guaranteed a starting spot on like a 1 year deal for like $5 million or less, I'd like listen to that. But I don't see it. Especially, I don't think he did himself any favors after he goes on social media and blasts Keith Carter publicly. Like, I mean. Like, if you're Mekhi Becton, you're coming off a terrible year. Yes, Keith Carter's not great. We understand that. But I feel like you're not the guy that should be putting anyone on blast on social media when, this is the first time in 2 years you actually made it through a season. So I think he hurt himself there, and I'd be really surprised if he's back.
Yeah, one of those throwing stones in a glass house or something like that, or something along those lines where it doesn't make sense. You have enough heat on you, Becton, for your play. No reason to poke fun at our offensive line coach if you're trying to get a contract potentially back here in New York. Boys and girls, we have reached the end of our roundtable. Let's go around the panel and give our closing thoughts. Anything you got going on, Jake, that you want to share?
Look, I think at the end of the day, if the New York Jets could get some good players and get some health from Aaron Rodgers, it's not as bleak as it might feel, Jet fans. Don't worry. The new jerseys have arrived and optimism is abound. Just wait till we get some combine nuggets. I'm sure we'll go nuts over something in a couple of weeks. So it's kind of slow right now, but I'm excited for things to kind of pick up and allow us as content guys to have more things to discuss besides kind of recycling through a lot of the same stuff.
O'Leary, any last thoughts for our panel?
Yeah, excited to continue to chop it up. Excited for the combine coming up. Usually that's where rumors really start to get going. And off-season time, as always, is a busy and fun time for the Jets. So we'll have a ton of coverage here. So make sure to tune into the roundtable.
Yeah, we're hoping we have Richie back for next week. Richie, if you're listening to us, we miss you, brother. Lots of stuff going on around the league, obviously, free agent rumors, all that good stuff. I got my first mock draft coming out. 32-team mock draft. So if you are not a Jet fan and you want to come check out who I think your team might take, that should be coming out tomorrow, I believe. But boys and girls, it's been a lot of fun talking with you today. This is the Jets Roundtable signing off. J-E-T-S.